I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. The door to her room was slightly ajar, the afternoon light cutting across the hallway like a spotlight on truth. I was on my way to ask her if she wanted tea, like I always did at 3, when I heard her whisper into the phone. "She's not my real mother," Claire said, voice low but sharp. "She just married my dad. I don't owe her anything." The words didn't stop me in my tracks, they pushed me backward. I turned away quickly, retracing my steps as quietly as I could, cradling the empty mug I had intended to fill with chamomile and honey. I made it to the kitchen without dropping it. Barely. I wasn't her real mother. Yes, technically she was right. But I had raised her. Since she was 6. I had braided her hair for every first day of school, stood in the rain at her piano recitals, stayed up through her first heartbreak, sat beside her in silence when her father, my husband, died suddenly of a heart attack 2 years ago. I was the one who cleaned out his closet when she couldn't bear to. I was the one who kept the house going when she locked herself in her room and wouldn't speak for weeks. I wasn't her mother, but I had mothered her in every way I knew how. Claire was 25 now, too old to speak with such cruelty. But grief has a way of warping time. Maybe she was still the angry girl who hadn't forgiven me for stepping into her family. Or maybe she never had. That night at dinner, she didn't look up once. I watched her push around roasted carrots, her silver fork tapping the porcelain plate. "I heard you earlier," I said finally, softly. She looked up. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "Then I guess you know how I feel." I nodded. "I suppose I do." She stood up without touching her food. "I'm not hungry." "Claire," I said, "I'm not hungry." She stormed off. Upstairs, slamming doors. Like a teenager. Like a stranger. That was day 1. Day 2 was worse. She didn't come down for breakfast. I found her curled on the couch by noon, scrolling through her phone with puffy eyes. She didn't greet me. Didn't ask for anything. I placed a cup of tea next to her anyway. "Don't," she muttered. "Don't what?" "Don't act like you care. Like you're my mother. You're not. You never were." "I never pretended to be your mother," I said, steadying my voice. "But I've always loved you like my daughter." She laughed bitterly. "You don't get to say that. Not anymore." My hands trembled as I picked up the untouched tea. "I know you're hurting," I whispered. "But so am I. You're not the only one who lost him." She looked away. The silence between us screamed louder than words. That was day 2. Day 3 broke everything. It started with a visit from the lawyer. Claire's father, my late husband Michael, had left her the house in his will. I had never told her. He had wanted her to have it when she turned 30, but I guess I never updated the paperwork after his death. That morning, a certified envelope came with her name on it. She read it at the kitchen table. Her eyes widened, then narrowed again. Then her rage erupted. "So this was your plan all along?" she shouted. "Keep me in the dark, live here like it's yours, while I think we're a family." "Claire, no, that's not wanted you to have it. We were supposed to update the will." "I didn't." "Liar." Her voice cracked. It wasn't just rage anymore. It was grief, raw and bloody. "You're not my mother," she screamed again, louder this time, like a final blow. I didn't defend myself. I couldn't. Somewhere deep down, I knew it was no longer about truth. It was about pain. She stormed upstairs again. But this time, she didn't slam the door. She packed. I heard the thud of her suitcase against the stairs. Saw her come down with red-rimmed eyes and clenched fists. "I'm leaving," she said, avoiding my gaze. "Don't try to stop me." "I wouldn't," I said quietly. "But please don't go like this." She paused at the door. For 1 second, I thought she might turn back. But she didn't. She left. That was the 3rd day. I didn't know, until later, what would happen that night. The storm rolled in just past midnight. The rain came down hard. The wind howled like it knew something I didn't. I stayed up, watching the trees bend and the streetlights flicker. I hadn't heard from her. Not a single call or message. I assumed she was staying with a friend. At 2:14 a.m., the phone rang. It wasn't Claire. It was the police. They asked if I was Eleanor Brooks. If I was the guardian of Claire Whitman. I hesitated, then said yes. I didn't know what else to say. "There's been an accident," the officer said. I stopped breathing. She was found unconscious in the driver's seat of a car that hydroplaned off Highway 9. "She's alive, but in critical condition. We need someone to come to the hospital." I didn't remember getting dressed. I barely remembered the drive. The rain never let up. When I arrived at the hospital, they led me to the ICU. I wasn't family by blood, but I had the papers. Her father had signed them years ago. I had medical proxy. She looked small on the bed. Tubes. Bruises. A machine breathing for her. She was unrecognizable, but still my girl. The doctor came in. She suffered a head injury, he said. There's swelling. We need to relieve the pressure immediately. We'll do everything we can. Will she wake up? I asked. He paused. We hope so. I nodded, thanked him, sat beside her, and waited. That was the night she lost everything. And it was the night I almost did, too. The sound of machines hummed in the background like some mechanical lullaby, constant, steady, almost cruel in its indifference. I reached for her hand, cold and limp under mine. Claire, I whispered, I know you can't hear me. Maybe you never will. But I need you to know I never stopped loving you. Not once. The words sounded foolish in the sterile white room, where love felt useless compared to blood, oxygen, and pressure in the brain. But still I said them, over and over again. I don't care that you said I'm not your mother, I told her. I don't need a title. I just need you to live. A nurse came in, adjusted a drip, looked at me with a kind of practiced sympathy. Try to get some rest, she said. I shook my head. I'll rest when she opens her eyes. I stayed in that chair all night. My back ached. My eyes dried out from crying. But I didn't move. Sometime around dawn, I pulled out an old photo from my wallet. It was from Claire's 8th birthday. Her face smeared with cake, teeth missing in the front, her arms wrapped around my waist. Her father had taken the photo just before he told her he was marrying me. She was smiling so wide then. A pure, hopeful smile. I pressed the photo against the bed rail. Remember her? I whispered. She loved me once. Even just for a little while. The doctors kept coming in with updates. Brain swelling was decreasing, slowly. No internal bleeding. Broken ribs, but manageable. A concussion, of course. But she wasn't waking up. Day 1 at the hospital turned into day 2. And then day 3. I only left once to go home and grab her blanket. The one she used to curl up with in college. It still smelled faintly of vanilla lotion. When I returned, a different nurse was on duty. She smiled as she saw me tuck it around Claire. She might not feel it, the nurse said. But they say patients can still sense warmth. Familiar things. It helps. I nodded, gently smoothing the edge under Claire's chin. I hope so. On the 4th morning, I came in with a thermos of weak coffee and a glimmer of hope, something I hadn't let myself feel in days. And that's when I saw it. Her fingers moved. Just slightly. Just once. But they moved. I called the nurse. The room filled with people. Machines beeped differently. The doctor came. Checked her pupils. Her reflexes. Asked me to step back, gently but firmly. I waited outside, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might tear out of my chest. Then the doctor came out. She's waking up. The next few hours were a blur. The breathing tube came out. She drifted in and out of sleep. She didn't speak, but her eyes opened. She blinked when I said her name. She was there. Not fully. Not yet. But the light was coming back. It took 2 days before she could form words again. Her voice was raspy, weak. The first thing she said was, water. The second thing? Where's my dad? I swallowed hard. Moved to the edge of her bed. Claire, do you know what happened? She frowned, then touched her temple. Car accident. Yes. You lost control on the road. You've been unconscious for days. She nodded slowly. I remember the rain. There was a pause. Then she looked at me, eyes confused. Why are you here? It hit like a punch to the ribs. I'm here because I love you, I said. Because you're family. She looked away. Her face tightened. I didn't think you'd come. I never left. Her lips trembled. And then, suddenly tears. Real, messy, wordless tears. The kind you don't wipe away because they don't need fixing. They need feeling. She turned her face toward the window, ashamed. But I stayed where I was, watching, letting her cry. Over the next week, she recovered slowly. The bruises faded. The IVs came out. Her voice grew stronger. But the silence between us returned like a cold draft under the door. I brought books, but she didn't read them. I brought photos, but she didn't look at them. Until one afternoon, when she finally broke the silence. I meant what I said, you know, she murmured. Back at the house. I know. Her fingers gripped the edge of the blanket. I was angry. Still am, maybe. I don't know how to stop missing him. I exhaled, slowly. Me neither. We sat there for a long while. I keep thinking if I push you away, she said, it won't hurt as much. Like maybe if I don't let anyone close, I won't have to lose them. I nodded. That's what grief does. It tricks you into thinking love is the enemy. Her eyes filled again. I'm sorry. I reached for her hand. You don't have to be sorry, I said. You just have to come back. By the end of the month, she was well enough to be discharged. I brought her home. She stood in the entryway of the house. She tried to run from the house her father built with his bare hands and looked around like it was foreign. Then she turned to me. I don't want to fight anymore, she said. Neither do I. She stepped forward. For the first time in a long time, she wrapped her arms around me. It wasn't tight. It wasn't long. But it was real. And that was enough. 3 months later, she started going to therapy. 6 months later, she invited me to come with her. I want you to understand what I'm feeling, she said, even when I don't say it. I do, I said, but I'll come anyway. We went together every Tuesday. We didn't fix everything, but we stopped breaking. 1 year after the accident, on a warm spring morning, Claire stood in front of a small group of women at her support group and said something I never thought I'd hear. She's not my biological mom, she said, nodding toward me, but she's the only mother I've ever had. And just like that, the wound began to close. There's a kind of quiet that only comes after a storm, not silence exactly, but stillness. Fragile, like the hush that follows a scream. That's what our days felt like after the accident. Me and Claire, 2 women learning how to breathe around the past. She still had scars, faint ones on her arms and deeper ones beneath the skin. She still got headaches. Some days, she forgot things what she came into a room for, a word she used to know. The doctors called it residual cognitive fog, but I knew what it really was. A ghost. And ghosts don't fade quietly. One evening, she sat across from me at the dining room table, her fingers resting on a photo of her father, the one where he was building Claire a treehouse, sweat on his brow, sawdust in his beard. Did he love you? She asked suddenly. The question startled me. Of course he did. No, she said, looking up. I mean, was he ever in love with you? Or were you just someone safe? I swallowed. Claire, what are you really asking? She stared at the photo. I used to think if he'd lived longer, you would have gone your separate ways. That maybe he stayed because of me. I felt the sting, but I didn't look away. We had our share of pain, I said honestly. But he chose me. He didn't stay for you. He stayed because he wanted to. She nodded, slowly. Then, did he have secrets? I stiffened. What do you mean? I don't know. Her voice was quiet. Lately, I just keep wondering if there's something I never saw. Something about him. About us. The silence stretched. Then she said, there's a box. In the attic. I found it last week when I was looking for my yearbooks. My heart skipped. I knew which box she meant. I'd packed it myself after his funeral. The one labeled only with his initials, MRW. I didn't open it, Claire said. But I want to. That night, we climbed into the attic together. The heat was stifling. Dust danced in the narrow shaft of light from the overhead bulb. She found the box tucked behind a suitcase and a broken lamp. She carried it down carefully. We sat in the living room, the box between us. She glanced at me once, then opened it. Inside were photos, letters, documents, receipts, a gold watch, a folded American flag from his father's military funeral, and at the bottom, a thin manila envelope marked private. Claire hesitated. Then she pulled it out, opened the flap, and slid the contents onto the coffee table. There were only 2 things inside: a letter, yellowed and worn, and a birth certificate. Her birth certificate. But it was wrong. Her mouth opened. This says I was born in Seattle. That's not wrong, I said carefully. You were. She looked at me sharply. No, I was born in Chicago. Dad always said. I closed my eyes. He lied. The words fell like a hammer in the quiet. Why? Claire whispered. I reached for the letter. This will explain it better than I can. She snatched it before I could touch it, her hands trembling. She read. Her lips moved silently. Her breath caught. Her eyes filled. Then she dropped the letter and stood up, swaying slightly. What does it say? I asked. She didn't answer. She just looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw it the shattering. He took me, she said, voice cracking. He took me from my mother. The world tilted. I shook my head. No, no, Claire. She held up the letter like a weapon. He kidnapped me, Eleanor, when I was a baby. He took me and moved across the country. He changed his name. And you? I didn't know. I gasped. You married him. You raised me. I didn't know, I repeated. Not then. Not until after. He told me Claire's mother had died, that she had no family. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That was a lie. I found out the truth 3 years into our marriage. I found documents. I confronted him. What did he say? That it didn't matter. That he was protecting you. Claire began to cry quietly, violently. And you stayed. I stayed. I said, my voice breaking, because I loved you. Because if I left, I thought he might run again. Take you somewhere I could never find you. She stared at me, shaking. You should have told me. I wanted to, I said. So many times. But I was afraid. Of what? That you'd hate me. Her lips trembled. I do. And then she left. I didn't follow her. Not this time. Some truths, I knew, had to be walked through alone. I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks. I left the porch light on every night. Not because I thought she'd come home, but because I couldn't stand the darkness. On the 15th night, I came home from the store to find her sitting on the front steps. Her eyes were swollen. Her hands were in her lap. She looked up. I went to Seattle. My breath caught. I found her. My birth mother. Her name is Renee. I sat down beside her slowly. She has another family now, Claire said. A husband. 2 teenage boys. But she never stopped looking for me. I'm so sorry, I whispered. She cried when she saw me. She thought I was dead. We sat in silence. Crickets chirped in the dusk. Finally, she said, I told her about you. My heart clenched. What did you say? I told her you didn't know. That you saved me in ways no one else could have. That I wouldn't have survived without you. I turned to her, my throat aching. Claire, she wants to meet you. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. She said any woman who could raise another woman's child and still be willing to lose her deserves to be honored. That night, for the first time in a long time, Claire let me hug her. Fully. Completely. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something deeper. Understanding. We drove to Seattle together the next weekend. The meeting with Renee was awkward at first. Tears, laughter, silence. All tangled together like a net none of us knew how to escape. But slowly, a new story began to write itself. One with 3 women. 3 mothers, in a way. Back at home, Claire took down the framed wedding photo of her father and me. Not out of anger. Out of honesty. I want to remember him, she said. But not the lie. So we put up a new photo, one of the 3 of us in Seattle, standing in front of the lake. Claire in the middle. Bridging the gap. The hardest part wasn't telling the truth. It was living with it. After Seattle, Claire returned changed, not broken, not angry, just raw. Like someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side without her skin. Everything hurt more now. Photos, memories, even kindness. She moved into her own apartment not long after. Said she needed space. I helped her carry boxes up the stairs without asking if she was sure. I already knew the answer. I'm not leaving because of you, she told me, standing in the doorway. I just need to figure out who I am. Apart from you. Apart from him. Apart from all of it. I nodded. I'll be here. If you ever need anything. She smiled. A real one this time. I know. She visited Renee every other month. Sometimes for a weekend, sometimes longer. And just once she asked me to come with her. We stayed in a small guest house on Lake Union, just a 10-minute walk from Renee's home. Claire cooked dinner that night. All her favorites. Mushroom risotto, lemon salad, roasted chicken with rosemary. She burned the edges of the risotto. We laughed. Renee watched us from across the table with a soft smile. You 2 move like old clockwork, she said. Like women who've spent a lifetime circling each other. I looked at Claire. We have. That night, Renee and I sat on the porch long after Claire went to bed. I hated you, Renee said softly. Before I even knew you. I imagined you as a villain. Someone who stole my child. I would have hated me too, I whispered. She turned to me. But now that I know you, I see something else. A woman who did the hardest thing of all stayed. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Some wounds don't need apologies. Only acknowledgement. Claire started therapy again. More focused this time. She dove into her past like a woman searching for ruins she'd buried with her own hands. She read through old journals. Talked to lawyers. Even met with one of her father's old colleagues. One day she called me. Did you know he had another name? She asked. I paused. No. Before he changed it. Before the custody battle. His birth name was Martin Green. I didn't say anything. He changed everything, she said. Even me. I wanted to say something wise, something maternal. But all I could say was, "You're not him." Spring turned to summer. On the anniversary of the accident, she came over. No fanfare, no warning. Just showed up with lilies in her hand, my favorite. "I wanted to be here tonight," she said. We sat in the backyard, watching fireflies drift in the humid dusk. She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a printed essay, the kind she used to write in college, but personal, intimate. It was titled, "The Woman Who Stayed." I read it slowly, line by line. It began like this. "She wasn't my mother by blood, but she became the blueprint of everything I now know about love." I didn't cry, not then. I waited until she was gone. Then I read it again under the kitchen light. 3 times. 4. Memorized it. In early autumn, Renee was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. Claire called me the moment she found out. "I'm flying out next week," she said, voice tight. "I want to be there. I'll drive you to the airport." "Will you come with me?" she asked suddenly. "She asked about you." "I'd like that." We stayed for 3 weeks. We cooked, cleaned, walked with her to the clinic. Claire shaved Renee's head before the chemo took it, cried with her after, sat beside her in silence when the pain came. Sometimes, I stood in the kitchen and watched them talk, mother and daughter, flesh and blood. I felt no jealousy, only awe. How strange and beautiful it was, watching them rebuild something from splinters. One night, Claire and I sat on the porch again. She had a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, tea cooling in her lap. "She calls you my second mother now," she said. I smiled. "She's kind. She's right." I turned to her. "She gave me life," Claire said, "but you taught me how to live it." Winter came. Renee's treatment worked. She grew stronger. Claire stayed in Seattle for the holidays that year. I spent Christmas alone for the first time in a decade. But on New Year's Day, a knock came at my door. It was Claire. She held up a small suitcase. "Just for a few nights." I stepped aside. "You can stay as long as you want." We made hot cocoa, watched an old black and white movie, and fell asleep on opposite ends of the couch like we used to when she was a teenager and didn't want to talk, but didn't want to be alone either. One morning, weeks later, she made breakfast, French toast with cinnamon. "You remember?" I said, surprised. "I remember everything now," she said. "The good and the bad." She sat across from me. "I used to think love had to look a certain way," she said. "Like biology. Like blood. But it doesn't, does it?" "No," I said. "It just has to stay." She nodded, then reached into her bag. "I've been working on something," she said. "For both of you." She handed me a slim, leather-bound book. The title was simple, Inheritance. Inside were letters to me, to Renee, to her younger self. Reflections. Photos. A braided narrative of grief, truth, identity, and love. She self-published it. Sent copies to local bookstores. By spring, a few of them asked to stock it. Then a librarian invited her to speak. Then a podcast called. Then a university. It didn't go viral, but it traveled. Quietly, like roots under soil. One night, we sat on the porch, me, Claire, and Renee. 3 women. 3 mothers in different forms. Claire raised her glass of iced tea. "To the ones who leave," she said. "To the ones who stay. And to those who learn how to come home." We clinked glasses under the stars. So no, I wasn't her mother by birth. But I was there the night she lost everything. And I stayed until she found herself again. That's what mothers do. They stay, even when it hurts. Even when the child screams you're not her mother. They stay until the screaming stops. And the healing begins.